Hey YouTube, this is fsfazekas. We're indoors today. It's a wintry day here in upstate New York. And what I've got for you is the follow-up to the Talon grip installation on the Smith&Wesson SD40VE. Now, let's take a look here. First of all, let's make sure we are safe. Nothing in the magazine. And nothing in the chamber. As a matter of fact, as I said in the earlier video, I have not even fired this, so we're looking forward in the spring to the first rounds through this, and of course we'll bring you a video on that. No magazine disconnect, so I'm going to go ahead and snap the trigger. Alright. Okay, well, I had a couple of questions asked about the first video. One of the first things was how much did I cut off of the grip when I trimmed it? If you'll remember, when I first started to wrap it around, there was some overlap. And of course the problem with overlap is that, that creates an edge that can be snagged on things and peeled off. So I wanted to make sure that I would have liked it if they met up exactly, but I would take a small gap like this over any kind of overlap. Now, so I cut twice, and the first time that I cut off, I think it was about 1/8 of an inch, and then I test fitted again, and I thought it still needed to be trimmed a little bit more, so I tried to take off about 1/16 of an inch. However, I had some difficulties with trimming that small an amount off the edge of the grip. The granulate material is pretty stiff, and with the scissors that I had, I ended up in a situation where like the material ended up like this in between the blades, and sometimes it would bend it, but it wouldn't actually cut it. So a couple of suggestions for you guys would be to use maybe some kind of a rotary cutting device, whether it's a handheld one that you roll a wheel, or whether it's a one with a head where you pull it, pull and push it back and forth, or perhaps a metal straight edge and X-Acto knife, obviously from the back, not on the granulate material or the front side. But those are two ways you might get a little better cut than I did here. The other thing you might do is when you first go to test fit, maybe tape this in place. Tape the leading edge of this in place, wrap it around, and you could get a more accurate marking, for your line where you're going to cut. But all in all, it didn't come out too bad. So that's it. 3/16 in total, 1/8 of an inch, and then about 1/16 of an inch. And I probably could have gone a little less than 1/16 of an inch to make this meet up better. The other question I got had to do with the back strap, and if that portion of the grip was giving me any trouble. No, not really. The granulate material is stiffer than the rubber texture, so it is more challenging to push this down. And as you see, the back strap is textured. So if you've got your texture on the grip of the gun, the frame of the gun, and you place the granulate material over it, it's laying over it. You're not really going to get it to work down into the texture like you might be able to with the rubber. If you heat that rubber up, it snugs down pretty well. Not so much with the granulate, but I don't have any adhesion problems, that being said. Also, I wanted to point out that these two small pieces here at the bottom that come straight down, it is still possible for me to move them, as you can see here. And I would just make sure that you look at the edges, that they are, flat down, lying as flush as they can with the surface. Make sure there's no bends or bows or bubbles, in these areas here. Might be a tendency to push them together or to pull them apart, which would cause creases or bulges in other areas. And then I did want to point out that I think you can see right here is the center of the frame, and this kind of pointed cutout is not quite sitting lined up with it. So obviously when I started wrapping it around, by the time I got to the back strap, it was not quite, aligned evenly along the center line of the frame. Now, I suppose you could try peel off enough of the backing and try applying this so that it was centered and rolling it forward, rolling it around, to either side. What I did, though, is I used the cutout for the Smith&Wesson emblem to kind of align this side of the grip. And then I just carried it along, and I tried to keep the gap between the edge of the magazine well and the bottom of the grip, tried to keep that consistent. I figured if this was parallel and this was aligned, this again being parallel to the bottom, that the grip should be lined up where it's supposed to be. As you can see, when I rolled around to this side, this opening is not quite lined up. It's not terrible, but it's not quite lined up. And then, of course, when I rolled all the way around, there was overlap in the front. But still like the grip. One thing I did want to mention is somebody said they left a few skin cells on the grip, and it is very aggressive. It's sandpaper for all intents and purposes. If you were running on a surface coated with this and you fell and you put your hands out, they would be abraded, definitely. Okay. However, boy, you just can't beat that grip. Now, another thing is that I used to have this same grip, the granulate, on my Springfield Armory XD9 subcompact. Initially, it was just a range gun for me. So when I started carrying that, and I would go to draw, from concealment, you can hear that. This kind of a granulate texture would pull my shirt out of the waistband. It was quite abrasive on the fabric. So for concealed carry purposes, of course, I would recommend you go with the rubber texture. However, this is going to be a range gun. It's the only thing I've got chambered in 40 Smith&Wesson. And granulate just can't be beat for that kind of usage. So I think that covers all the questions and was just a follow-up. The original Talon grip installation video was shot with a camera that did 640 by 480 and not very good onboard sound. So now that I've upgraded my equipment, I just wanted to give you guys a second look at this. And then I'm going to pause the video here for a moment. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and do some handheld close-up so you can see the details on the grip. So I'll be right back. Hey YouTube, I'm back. Here we've got a little closer view of the Smith&Wesson SD40VE with the Talon grip installed. First of all, here you can see the line where I cut. Now that would be on the left side, so towards the front of the grip is the edge that I cut. It's not too terribly bad, but probably could have been done better. And as we rotate around, here's the cutout for the Smith&Wesson emblem. And you can see that the various segments of the back strap portion are adhered and down, and I think maybe you can get a little better sense of how this is not quite aligned. Okay, you can see the texture there on the center line of the frame. And then as we roll around to the other side, again, hopefully you can see that this cutout is not quite as well aligned as the one on the other side. And then we roll around all the way around the front of the grip. And finally we come to where I trimmed it. And again, just want to point out that trimming it, in both the granulate and the rubberized texture, you really don't want any overlap, because that seam would be something that could be snagged on and start to peel the grip off, and you don't want that to happen. So like I said, I'll take this small gap, over any sort of overlap. Okay, and that wraps it up. Once again, that's a follow-up on the installation of the Talon grip on a Smith&Wesson SD40VE. Thanks for looking in on me.